Thank you all for being here. I am delighted to introduce Melissa George, who's going to talk to us this afternoon about her program. She's going to give us an overview of the work that she's been doing and the lessons that she's learned from establishing and developing her program. And she's real happy to take questions as we go through the presentation today. So I'll do the best job I can of trying to catch questions as they come up and run mics to you and all that sort of thing, so we can get your questions in the room while she's on the slides that you're interested in hearing more about. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Melissa. Did I miss anything illustrious? Who's going to talk about her program. Melissa is, well, where's your bio? She's currently the reentry coordinator for the Welcome Home Reentry Program in Montgomery County, Maryland, and she'll tell us more about that as we get started.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. I have to get used to using a mic. This is the first. I traveled really far, about 15 miles to get here. I'm sure most of you traveled a lot farther. But I coordinate a mentoring program in Montgomery County, Maryland. And just a show of hands, how many of you currently have a mentoring program up and running? So most of you. How many of you are just starting? Okay, so a good number too. I want this to be interactive, so please ask questions. Feel free throughout to interrupt, that's fine. I just want to tell you a little bit about my background. I was a probation officer, juvenile probation officer in the state of Maryland, and I also worked for a program called Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and I was a case supervisor supervising advocates who worked closely with kids who were either involved with the Department of Juvenile Services or involved with child welfare. I came to this position as the reentry coordinator about 3 years ago. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our program, what we do, how we do it, what works, what doesn't work, and again, feel free to ask questions. So the Welcome Home Reentry Program is a nonprofit organization. We actually started providing services sort of in an unofficial way in 1984. The founder of our program is a Catholic priest. He was the chaplain of the DC jail for 25 years. And he saw a great need for helping individuals as they return home to the communities. So he had the idea and the foresight of starting a mentoring program. And he started the program actually in the District of Columbia in 2006, and then it expanded to Montgomery County and to Prince George's County shortly after. So we still actively have 3 jurisdictions that are working within the Welcome Home Reentry Program in this area. It's interesting, we'll go into a little bit more detail about how it works. Each jurisdiction is very different. The overall program is the same, but the way we actually do the work we do on a daily basis is a little bit different. So our mission, probably the mission of many of you here today, is really to reduce recidivism, to educate the community, and to develop strong systems of support within the community, primarily for the reason why we're here, the men and women that we're serving who are returning from jail, prison systems back to the community. I think a big piece and something I think we need to highlight is that collaboration really is the way to make this work. And with our program, the Welcome Home Reentry Program, we are very fortunate to have many collaborative partnerships within the community. We work closely with the Archdiocese of Washington because our founder is a Catholic priest. We also work closely with Catholic Charities of DC, and I'll get into a little bit, but we receive donations from them or grants from them. We also receive in-kind donations from them, such as office space and use of telephone and that kind of thing, which I think works really well also. We have a close working relationship with the Montgomery County Department of Corrections, and with Prince George's County, we actually work really closely with the county health department. In DC, we work closely with Unity Healthcare, And we also work very closely with Mount Vernon Place United Methodist Church, which is actually catty corner across the courtyard out here. They give us office space for our main office. We receive funding from a variety of different donations, either private donations through the Catholic churches or through different faith organizations. We also receive government grants, foundation grants. We also receive money from just different people interested that hear about our program that really want to help and give back in a special way. These pictures are of the Montgomery County Prerelease Center. Have any of you heard of the Prerelease Center? One, two, several? Okay. Well, the director is actually with us today. He is the director of the Prerelease Center in Montgomery County. And the wonderful thing about our collaborative relationship with them is that my office is actually located in the Prerelease Center. So I have daily, hourly, minute-to-minute access to all of the mentees that I'm actually serving through the program. This is just a couple different pictures. The Prerelease Center is a work release program for men and women who are coming out of the county jail or out of the federal system and returning to the general area of Montgomery County, Maryland. And it's a work release facility. So men and women are required to find employment while they're placed there. They're actually still incarcerated while they're there. The facility itself is very innovative and a wonderful place to visit if you're back in town or you have a few hours while you're here. There are no bars. The doors aren't locked. Men and women come freely because they have to fill out specific community passes. Staff have to know where they are at all times, of course, because they're still incarcerated. But it's not set up necessarily like a jail. The doors aren't locked, there's not bars. So it serves really well for our purpose, for mentors coming into the facility and meeting with individuals while they're there. And the other purpose of taking mentors into the community to become involved with other pro-social activities that are out there. So in terms of mentor recruitment, we actually, because our founder is a Catholic priest, and because we work closely with the Archdiocese of Washington and with Catholic Charities, we do a lot of our recruitment through the Catholic churches in the area, and that's in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and the District of Columbia. So we actually can catch or reach a lot of individuals that are in those three jurisdictions. A lot of our volunteers are Catholic. You don't have to be Catholic to be a volunteer. You don't have to be Catholic to be a mentee either. But that's just one of our main sort of recruitment areas. We also recruit through many other faith communities, through many other faith or churches. One of the men speaking later today who's here, one of our mentors, is actually from a local Baptist church. So we really want to involve as many faith organizations, civic organizations as we can to serve the men and women that we have, because every one of them is different. We also recruit through word of mouth. I have a lot of volunteers who get involved and take their examples and their experience back to their church, back to their friends, and really get other people involved in this sort of work. Montgomery County is wonderful in terms of being innovative. There's a Montgomery County volunteer website. If your communities have that, I highly recommend listing your organization on a website such as that. It reaches a lot of people. Ours is great because you actually can put in specific criteria, how many hours you're requiring for your mentors, the times of day. Ours is very flexible, so we get a lot of people who are retired that want to volunteer, or people that aren't retired but might not have time during the week, but they have time on the weekends. So it's a great way to really separate and kind of categorize who you think would want to be involved. Another thing that I do is I place brochures at the local libraries. I get a lot of people calling just to find out about the program, what is it, what we do, and it's another great way to kind of put feelers out there for people in the community. Civic organizations, I try to speak at as many groups, Kiwanis Club groups, other groups in the community as I can, and it's another good way to spread the word, get the word out there that you're looking for mentors, and in turn, they help to spread the word as well. And then finally, volunteer fairs. We have Montgomery College or University of Maryland. They have a lot of volunteer fairs. Going to those, speaking at those events, being available for questions. It's a good way to really get the word out and get as many volunteers as you can. Mentor criteria. So the first thing we ask for our mentors is for them to commit to a year. And the way we do it in Montgomery County is that we match individuals, mentees, with mentors while they're actually still in the Montgomery County Prerelease Center. Many of them are there for typically 90 days. And it's a great, great way for us to match them with somebody while they still have the support and wraparound services of a program that's already set up. And then the mentors continue to meet with their mentees after they return home into the community. So it kind of helps solidify the relationship while they're still there. And then it offers the support when they really need it, when they're returning home and they lose some of that support that's built into the facility. So we ask for a year commitment on both parts, mentor and mentee. Obviously, to possess knowledge, skills, abilities, sound life experiences. Many people come to me and ask if they have to be a social worker or if they have had to have worked in corrections in the past or be a psychologist. No. I mean, quite frankly, if you're a parent, that's probably great training enough. Or if you've had involvement, mentoring unofficially, perhaps a youth, somebody, younger, that's great training as well. We also offer a training class, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that helps people learn better communication skills, listening skills, but you don't necessarily have to be a trained social worker or a trained clinician to do this kind of work. And we'll talk a little bit about what skills we look for in a mentor, and that can be really important. Obviously, to feel passionately about the mission and the purpose and what we're doing, I think is critical for people. Usually for them to even get to the point and work up the courage to come and find out more, they are pretty passionate about working with this population. We complete a background check on all of our mentors, and our actual program rule is that we don't preclude anyone from having a history, so if somebody has a felony in their past or misdemeanor, but we want them to be off paper, not to be free of probation or free of charges for the previous year, or 3 years. So we do a background check, we look at people's history and past, and I have mentors who have had substance abuse issues in the past or who have had felonies or misdemeanors. That doesn't necessarily preclude them from volunteering. In fact, it could be a great way for them to really connect with their mentee. However, you want to make sure that you're choosing people that are going to make sound judgments, be reasonable, good role models for people. So you want to make sure that throughout your screening process, whatever program rules you instill or come up with, that you follow through with those for each individual. I think the 3-year mark seems to be standard when I talk to other groups, but I'm not sure. No, you're shaking your head. It seems to work well for us. Any questions about that? Okay. Have a current TB test. It's actually only in Montgomery County that we ask for that because it's a rule of the facility. Since they're coming into the facility, we need to make sure that they don't have TB. Mm-hmm. Good question. We don't drug test our mentors. One of the questions on our interview form is if they have a history of substance abuse and or alcohol abuse. And we are really relying on honesty in that way. We don't drug test them. However, we also ask for two references. So we're hoping that in doing the reference checks or in speaking with somebody that we can weed through some of that. But that's a good question. He said, are there no charges of any kind within the previous 3 years? And I would say, correct. Unless you give me a specific example. Because this is the rule, But everybody's different. Every person, you have to sort of take some things, and if there's a question about it, I would take it to my executive director and the board of directors. But we haven't had an issue of that, like that, come up. I've had men and women come through that have had a felony on their record in the past year, and it's just too soon for them to be a mentor, in my opinion, to somebody else that's coming home. We've also had people within the last year to 2 years who are still on probation, and again, it's too soon. How can they possibly mentor now a person who perhaps is still involved with the criminal justice system in some way? That's not to say they can't do it later. And what I usually recommend is that, we keep them in our registry and that they get back in touch with us after the 3-year mark. But we haven't honestly had a lot of that come up.
I'm going to start passing. Sure.
For our mentors, we say that not to have had an arrest in the last 3 years, but some of them are still on felony probation. They've discharged parole, but they have a 5-year tail for probation, and they can't they're not willing to let them off early. So they haven't had a charge in 4 years. They're in their last year of probation, and they're in college. They're in their 3rd semester of college, and they're the perfect mentors. So what we've done is, if they can't get into the jail, we've had to create teams, mentoring teams, because our jail isn't going to keep certifying people to go in. And so what we've done is we've taken 2 teams of 4 women, because ours is a Second Chance Women's Mentoring Grant, and those 8 women and 2 case managers will be the ones that do all the pre-release. And then we have post-release mentoring teams, which then we use the women that aren't off probation yet and things like that, to navigate systems in the community that we know that the participants are needing to have when they get out.
Mm-hmm. That's a great example. And I guess it just depends on your jurisdiction. And I know for Prince George's County, we've had a difficult time getting people even badged to go into the facility. So I imagine that would add extra, hoops that we'd have to jump through. So I would just, defer to your program and see what you talk about it and see what you think is best. But when it comes down to it, if you need to bring it back to the board, then do so. We just haven't had an instance like that where we had to.
Our Department of Corrections requires that somebody not have been on probation, parole, or anything else for 5 years. It's not coming from us, it's coming from the department. So this question is really directed to the director, whom you said is somewhere in the room, with regard to the facility. So what I'm understanding is you're saying that the 3 years comes from your agency.
The 3 years comes from our nonprofit.
Right.
However, it's based on the fact that a lot of the facilities we're working with require that as well. So in Montgomery County, I've been told for us that you should be off probation for 3 years before you volunteer in the facility. In Prince George's County, I can't tell you specifically, but it is something like that.
Well, that's really what I'm asking, is whether the facility director, could it be less than 5 years? It sounds like 3 years is okay. And whether other people have experiences with regard to the amount of time in their jurisdictions.
Right. Does anyone else have that experience or has had that experience?
Our county facility they wanted to require 10 years. And we've had to, they've recently, I don't know that they've changed the policy, but they're putting in place an appeal process or some sort of something, because we were like, how are these folks supposed to have people who have life experiences like them be able to come in and help? There were so many people willing to help that were, 6, 7, 8 years off probation. So they're working on that now. But our facility wanted 10 years. Our organization requires 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think she may have answered part of my question, but I think your 3 years applies to going into facility. But what about mentors working outside who are not having to go inside? And then I wanted to ask you the TB question, since I have the mic now. That only applies to mentors going into facility, that they have to have that TB test?
For the first question, The 3-year mark applies for everyone in our program. We thought that was a good balance again, but it's based on our experiences working with the Department of Corrections and or what our volunteers are and aren't able to do as far as getting in or access to the facilities. Because it's too complicated when you have some who can get in a facility, some who can't get in a facility, some who can only get matched after post-release, some who can get matched while they're still incarcerated. Then it just gets very complicated. And as far as the TB test, we require it, yes, because they're going into a facility. It's probably a good thing to do either way, but I don't know that we do it. We do it in the other 2 jurisdictions because they're also going into the facilities. Yes.
I noticed that a lot of your mentors come from faith-based. Is evangelizing the mentees an issue?
That's a good question. It's on one of my slides. Well, it's actually on the bottom. We are faith-based, and part of our orientation talks about the fact that many people come to do this because of their faith. They're called to do this. They're called to give back in this special way because their faith or morality calls them to do it. But we don't preach or proselytize. So I've actually had mentors express interest in doing this, follow through with the orientation and training, and then after finding out that we aren't here to preach and proselytize, drop out of the program, and they find another program that suits their interests. There are several prison ministry groups through various churches, specifically in my county, that go into the jail on a weekly basis, and they bring Bibles into the facility. They're there to pray with people. So they're doing mentoring in a way, but it's a more preaching, proselytizing way that they're doing it. So we're very clear about not doing that, and I think that's part of the reason our program works so well. The mentees don't feel threatened necessarily by the fact that somebody's coming in to talk to them or make them change religions or become religious. They are able to, if their mentee agrees with them or is open to discussing religion, because religion is obviously a big part of somebody's life. If the mentee is agreeable and wants to discuss that, then we certainly encourage it. However, we make it very clear to our mentors that you're not here for the sole purpose of making somebody become religious, change religion, and that sort of thing. It's just that we recognize that religion is obviously a big part of somebody's life. And in being a mentor, we want the mentors to work and touch on all parts of somebody's life, including religion. But if the mentee's open to that.
Hi, good afternoon. Carrie from Phoenix, Arizona. I actually have 2 questions, and I apologize if I'm jumping ahead of your slides here. I just was curious about your average number of mentors at any given time and what the retention rate is for their 1-year commitment.
Good question. We currently have 42 active matches, and I have about 56, 57 mentors. The discrepancy in the numbers is that some of the mentors were previously matched, and after their mentor match ended, they decided to take a slight leave of absence or a couple weeks off. They need to sort of gather themselves before they get rematched. So I think it's good to keep probably more in your pool, and that way you have people to pull from to match. Because I have a lot of mentees always. You know, I have daily access to them in the facility. Every day I'm meeting, or every week I'm meeting with 5 or 6 new mentees who are interested in getting a mentor. Now some of them they pull themselves out. Either they're really not committed or motivated to getting a mentor, or they just decide they don't have the time, or they might sign up for the program before they actually get a job, and then when they get a job, they decide they don't have enough time and it's just not a top priority. So I'm constantly screening mentees through the program, but it's a balance because you have to constantly screen and recruit mentors too, so that you always have an adequate pool to match.
Are those one-for-one matches?
Yes, we match one-on-one. When the program first started, we played around with the idea of matching mentor pairs. I have to tell you though, just figuring out 2 people's schedule is enough. Trying to figure out 3 people's makes it even more complicated. So we decided, and really it was the expressed interest of all of our mentors, that they really wanted to be matched one-on-one. They were looking for that one-on-one relationship, and their mentees were as well.
Now, from the mentees, are you also asking for a 1-year commitment from them?
We do. And I'll tell you, that's probably the hardest part sometimes, because they're very amenable to that when they're in the facility. But when they return home, right,
Lots of nods on that.
life takes over. You know, they go back to their families. And it's not all that they're slacking. It's that, you know, they have a lot that's going on. They have jobs, they have counseling, they have abused person programs that they go to. There's just a lot that they are required to do when they leave. They have to check in with probation and parole. And although we try to make sure that our mentors are seen separate from all of that, sometimes they unfortunately get lumped into that, and the mentees just say, you know, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do it. So it's something I'm constantly working on, and one of the slides I'll touch a little bit more on that. We're actually in the process of developing our documentation and just you know, program development and strategic planning in general. And in doing that, we've hired a consultant to come in and help us gather better data and accurate data, because really, how are we affecting recidivism? We don't necessarily know. I know it works because I see it, I hear the stories, all the wonderful things that are happening, but how do you really know unless you have the data? And so we've hired somebody that's coming in to help us, which goes back to your question back there about how many people are following through with the year commitment. All of my mentors are, because not necessarily with their direct first matched pair, but if the relationship ends, all of the mentors come back and want another match. They want another mentee. They really get a lot out of it. The question is, how many of the pairs are making that year mark? And so we're really trying to work on how to get that data. And if the data shows, you know, we can improve in some way, then we definitely want to do that.
3 questions over here, then I think we'll move
Okay.
forward.
Okay, you may have alluded to the answer for the first question, that is, how effective has your mentoring-mentee relationship been? And my second question is, going back to your recruitment process, how are you working with the local churches, and how have you been able to avoid this proselytization situation? I know we've had a very difficulty process working with our churches. So,
Well, we try to work very closely with our churches, and the best way to do that is through our mentors. After they become mentors, active mentors with the program, having them go back to their prison ministry groups or the congregation at large and say, I'm volunteering with this great program, we need your help, and to explain a little bit about what it is. I think it eases some of their concerns when they find out more about it. And that it's not that talking to people about faith is off limits. It's just there's a difference between that and proselytizing. So I think people become very comfortable when they find out that it can be an active part of your relationship. And in fact, many of our mentors take their mentees to church with them. Either the mentor's church or faith organization, whether it be Catholic, Protestant, Judaism, they'll go, or the mentee might have a different belief, and the mentee might take their mentor to their mosque or, you know, church. So it's nice because they can work together, and it doesn't mean that they have to change somebody's belief system, but they're supporting their belief system.
Is there time requirements for the mentors that you're asking them to do each month?
Good question. She asked if there's a time requirement. We ask for an hour a week, which could to some of you seem like a lot. To others, it doesn't seem like enough. What I've found is that most of our mentors spend way far beyond an hour a week helping people. And it doesn't have to be direct one-on-one service. So we actually ask for in-person an hour a week. But most of our volunteers go back home, they do research on different community resources or ways to help somebody understand a mental illness. So a lot of the mentors are doing so much beyond that, which is why we've really had to expand our catchment in terms of documentation. We used to just ask for person-to-person telephone contact, how much you're meeting. And now we really ask, well, how much research are you doing? How much transportation are you doing? Because a lot of our mentors are wonderful in taking our mentees to different doctor's appointments or meeting with kids, different things like that. So you really have to, I think, broaden your idea about what mentors can do. Yes, the release clause. I don't have anyone actively sign a release clause, but I let them know, both of them, when I meet with them, that this is really a program that we want it to work. We want it to help the mentees. So I always tell my mentees, if it doesn't work, give it a second chance. And then if it still doesn't work, tell me, because I want you to get something out of this. And I've had several come to me and say, I just don't feel connected to my mentor. Can you please rematch me? And I will. I think that's really important for them to know. Now, I have plenty of others who passively aggressively decide not to call their mentor back time and time again, and that doesn't work. So, you have to be aware of what your mentors and mentees are doing at all times, and it really requires a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of orientation, training classes, ongoing support on both sides so that you feel connected and they feel connected to you. Because it's very easy to lose track of a pair or a person, and then a month goes by and I think they've been meeting for an hour a week, and I find out, no, I haven't seen my mentor in 3 weeks or 3 months. That's not okay. That's something we have to be actively engaged in what's happening.
Two quick questions. Are you a second chance at grantee? And what performance outcome data do you have? Because you mentioned that you're now hiring an evaluator. What outcome data do you have?
The first question is that we've applied twice and we haven't gotten them, so congratulations to all of you. We're trying again. And the second question is that we're working on gathering data. So we use as much as we can. Right now, we're really tracking certain criteria, demographical information about our mentors and mentees, the time involvement that they put in on both ends. But we're really working with this evaluator to find out what else we can appropriately track and what we can do with the information. Great questions. And this is really the heart of, I think, what makes a program work or not work as well. And again, we're really, really, really lucky, I can't stress that enough, in Montgomery County because we have a great director and a great program overall. And he really supports the interaction of the mentors in the facility. It's also nice because every person, at least in my jurisdiction in Montgomery County, has a case manager assigned to them at the facility. So we really stress that it's not the mentor's role to do a lot of that work, case management type work. That it's really the case manager's role or job to do that. And it's very supportive. However, when they leave the facility, it becomes it falls further onto the mentor to help identify resources. Hopefully by then, a good boundary has been set. We talk a lot about boundaries in our training, in our orientation classes. The good thing is that when they're still, the mentees, we call them residents in the work release program, when the residents are in the facility, still residing in the facility and meeting with their mentor, there's a lot of checks and balances in place there because they are actually required to have a signed, approved community pass from their case manager before they can go into the community to do anything. It becomes more difficult when they are released and they're meeting with their mentor in the community without the checks and balances of the facility. And that's, again, where we rely a lot on self-report from both. We also rely on me, the coordinator, to make sure I speak with, connect with, email whatever I can do to remain actively involved and vice versa with my mentors. Again, the facility won't allow a mentor resident, or mentee or resident to leave the facility unless they have a signed community pass. So the mentor is allowed to drive them if that's worked out between the mentor and mentee. They actually, for instance, we have a mentor mentee here. I have to leave enough time so they can actually talk to you. But Floyd and Rudy meet together on at least a weekly basis. And Floyd picked Rudy up at the facility today and brought him here in his car. But they are allowed to go out into the community for various activities, whether it be a conference like this, or to go to a baseball game, or to go to the library to do research, or to the bookstore to get coffee. It's a nice thing for a mentee and a mentor to do. And while doing that, they can focus on job search or mental health issues if they need to identify counseling or something like that, and the case manager asks for help or is okay with help. Those are all okay things to do. The great check and balance at the facility is that every single person coming back into the facility that resides there has to be breathalyzed, and they also do random urinalysis 3 times a week for every resident. That all goes away, of course, when they're released, and then we rely more on self-report, observation, mentor reports.
One of the things that she didn't say is that what we have is a 6-week training program where it's drummed in your head that you don't give out money, you don't give anything to the person that you are mentoring. So I think that 6-week training brought a lot of things to light that we didn't know, and it really helps to facilitate the relationship and make sure we follow the rules.
All of our mentors attend an orientation session, and it's jurisdictionally specific. So if you're in Montgomery County, you would attend my training class, orientation class. If you're mentoring in Prince George's County, you'd attend Prince George's. And that's really because each jurisdiction, although we operate as one program, each jurisdiction is very different. So like I said, my mentors meet with mentees in the facility first, and then they transition home. In DC, mentors are meeting with everybody who's post-release. So everybody has been released from the jail already. So the matches take place after they've been released. So we talk a lot about the specifics of the program during the orientation session. We give a tour of the facility so that they're aware of where they're working. We talk a lot about the program rules, what the program requires, put people in touch with case managers, etc. We also really focus on making sure the mentors are aware of boundary issues. So not giving big gifts, not giving money, not offering to take people to extravagant places, and that's really important, I think, in the beginning. So people do less in terms of making sure that they're not spending any money on their mentor in the beginning, mentee. And if eventually, as the relationship develops and grows, they want to take them out to dinner to celebrate graduation or a GED, passing of a GED exam, that's fine. But it's always easier to go ahead in little increments than ever to go back. So if you start off and your mentee is expecting you every week to take you out to dinner, it's really hard to turn around and say, no, we're not going out to dinner this week. So we really try to make sure our mentors are aware. Does every single person do that well? No. And that's why I'm there, because they might have questions, they might not understand. We really have to make sure we're on top of what they're doing together. We also, talk about, in addition to boundaries, we talk about not taking your mentee home with you. We talk about not giving out home addresses. I think it's great for the mentees and mentors to exchange email and even cell phone numbers, because it's important that your mentee can get in touch with your mentor instead of having to go through me. Even though I joke I'm a daily planner for about 80 people on any given time, that doesn't work as well as if your mentor and mentee can get in touch, because it's all about trust and forming trusting relationships. And if your mentee is aware that you're okay with him or her calling or emailing you, it helps set up a better dynamic, and it makes the relationship stronger, I think. All of our mentors and mentees separately, this is PreMatch, fill out applications, and the applications really are to gather demographic information. Each mentor-mentee separately pre-match sits down with me for an interview process, again, to gather more information. Also, it's a great tool for me to make the match because the interview process asks about family background, health, mental health, education. So it really gives me a sense and a feel for each person, and on the mentor side, how the mentors can be effective and how they can really use their skills and life experiences to help. For instance, if one of my mentors was a previous teacher, that's great. I might have a mentee who needs help studying for their GED exam. And so on the flip side, with my mentees, I gather as much information as I can about their previous experiences and really why they're there. And we ask them, why do you want a mentor? Why would a mentor be helpful to you? We also ask about preferences, race, age, gender. Some of my younger mentees, we do serve only adults, but and the facility is an adult facility, but we get some very young people, you know, young guys, young women, 18, 19, 20, that really express that they'd get along better with a female mentor. And I take that into account when I match somebody. And I can see it all in your faces. You mean you match men to women and women to men? Yes, in some cases we do. I have access to all of the mentees' backgrounds, charges. So I thoroughly read the files, I speak with their case managers, and I make an assessment about what would be an appropriate match for this person. Again, a lot of my younger mentees do really well matched with an older female who can serve as either a grandmother or mother figure in their life, and many of them respond really, really well to that. Others don't, and others might have criminal offenses in their background that are, you know, sexual orientation or that are specifically against females, and I would never match somebody in that instance with a female mentor. So I think the more information you have, the better. It helps make a better match. And I said this a while ago, but time availability is a major, major piece that I look at when I match people. If I have a retired mentor and somebody who's not yet working in the facility, that's great. They have they seem to have a lot of time. Although I say that, and a lot of my retired mentors are busier than my mentors who aren't. So you really have to cater each individual interview towards that person and find out as much information as you can. The other piece is personality. I would not match somebody a mentor who is very timid and shy and meek to a mentee who's very timid and shy and meek. I can't imagine them talking very much. So I would probably match them to somebody with a different personality. Interests, I try as much as I can to find common ground between people. So I try to find a mentee, a match with a mentor who might have the same interest in sports or the same interest in fishing or movies. And that just helps them find something to do if it's not actively working on goal creation or finding again, a job or something of that sort. Because that's great, it's wonderful to be a mentor doing those kinds of things, but it's also important to be able to do, just pro-social fun stuff with your mentee. And then part of the interview process on both sides, again, is individual preferences, and then my judgment comes in a lot with past or previous charges. These are traits that many of you recognize in good, solid role models. Hopefully people that you're looking for in your mentoring program will have similar traits. I highlighted the first 5 because we recently polled our mentors, and these are the ones that they self-identified as the most important traits to have as a mentor. So I tend to agree. Accepting, being authentic, people can see through, if you're not authentic, your mentor can see right through it. So being patient, being respectful, and being trustworthy. I'll go over these quickly because we pretty much talked about this, but what mentors can do, they can do a whole bunch of things. It's really hard to pinpoint, narrow it down to one thing or 5 things even. And I tell my mentees that it's really catered towards your individual mentee, or tell mentors to their individual mentee, because everybody's different. Every relationship's different. Every mentee has different needs, different skills. And it's just really nice to have people that you're working with collaboratively who understand that as well. A lot of our mentors, mentees do prosocial activities together, going to the movies, going to theater, library, baseball game, museums. And I know you're all in a conference, but if you have a chance, our museums are free, which is really nice for all of our mentors and mentees. So they tend to take advantage of that sort of thing. And just, ultimately helping people reintegrate successfully. And that can take on whatever life it wants to, really, within the guidelines of the program and boundaries and that sort of thing. Okay. A big piece of that is helping them identify resources, either through the Department of Corrections or through your coordinator, or just through doing research on their own. So part of supporting and the matches and retaining mentors really has to do, I think, with the jurisdictional coordinator being available. And I don't mean on call. You don't have to be on call 24 hours a day, but you need to be available to people. You need to answer your phone. You need to be there to answer emails, answer questions, offer advice, support. And I think it's really important for the mentors to feel supported and to feel like they have somebody that they can talk to anytime. And I think the mentees benefit from that as well, because my office is in the pre-release center. I have daily access to the residents. They can come to my office anytime. They know my doors are open, whether they have a question about their mentor relationship or whether they have just a question about resources or something that I can help them do with their mentor. It's nice to have that flexibility and availability. We actually expect all of our mentors to complete 15 hours of training within the first 18 months. And we've really gone back and forth a lot about this with our board of directors, because some of us think that the mentors should have to do it before they become mentors. Some of us think that they should have to do it along the way because we don't want to lose people. So what we've come down to is that we want our volunteers to complete it within 18 months of service. So we have training that touches on a variety of issues, communication skills, better listening skills, the DISC model, which talks about people's different personality traits and how, if you are an indirect person, how you work well with somebody who's very directive and vice versa. So it's really nice to have that available to mentors as well to help educate them. The DISC model, it's DISC. It's a personality trait kind of assessment. Thank you. We do an orientation session before the match, and in terms of active training, it is training. It's more focused on the facility and also the guidelines of the program, so what we expect from our mentors in terms of boundaries, keeping boundaries, personal boundaries, being available to them. It's more logistically speaking, and also the traits that we're looking for. But we really have them do sort of the training as they go. One thing we use that I think is really important to mention is that, obviously you're going to have to gather information, and I know you have specific tools that you're using, but we've found SurveyMonkey to be really great because your mentors can go on and document what they're doing in terms of time, or, you set up the survey however you want. But for us, it's been great because it really takes a lot less time for a mentor to do that, because our mentors, most of them are still working full time. They're already volunteering well over an hour a week. And so usually I get a lot of eye rolling and, things like that when I remind my mentors every month, that their documentation is due. And I understand that, but we also need this documentation to make sure our program stays around. We also offer ongoing support sessions. So I offer, every 8 weeks, I offer an ongoing support session specifically for my mentors. And I try to bring in speakers from the community. So for instance, I'll have somebody come in and speak about sober housing in the community. Or I'll have somebody from the Department of Health and Human Services come in and speak about, a specific topic. But it's also important to have your mentees engaged and for them to feel like a community too. So I'll have mentees gather as a group every 8 weeks or so, and we get together and talk about various issues they might be having with their mentors, or in general, or talking about, again, having somebody come in from the community that can present or offer information about food stamps or how to access those, that sort of thing. Okay, so what works? I think we talked about a lot of this, but you need to really recognize that each match is unique and take that into account. And again, we talked about that with the story I gave. She was asked not to be an active mentor anymore, but for this woman, it worked. It helped her get access to what she needed, and she's been very successful. Obviously, collaboration is a huge piece of this. Collaborate with whomever you can, get them involved. It not only helps you find new mentors, but it also helps find resources that are out there for your mentees. And then remain realistic. Mentors need to know that your mentee might relapse. Your mentee might go back to jail. Now, obviously, we're here, we're hoping that won't happen, but if you present this as, like fantasy land, like you're gonna cure everything and do all, it sets your mentors up for failure and your mentees. So you really need to make sure you as a program are aware of that, and that your mentors know that it's a precarious situation sometimes, and people are facing a lot of challenges and barriers, and you're there to help them through that, but that there's not just a magic wand you can say and this all goes away. The other thing I think that's important is we are a strictly voluntary program, so nobody is forced into joining and getting a mentor. We partner with probation and parole in terms of collaborating, but they don't add us to their probation order. Nobody's ordered into participating, and I don't think it would work if we were. So I don't know that anyone does that, but it's just something to keep in mind.
How do you handle your mentor-mentee relationships when the offender is a sex offender?
Interesting question, because we have several sex offenders that are involved in our program right now. It can be challenging in the fact that there's not a lot of resources out there. So I think if anything, the mentors get frustrated that there's not a lot that we can do. I had a recent mentee leave the Prerelease Center, and his mentor helped him, I can't even tell you how many hours, to find housing, because many of you know housing for sex offenders is a huge issue. And they were able to find housing, and then the next barrier to that was this was a pretty prominent doctor who could no longer go back to practicing medicine, so he had to find another job. So they started tackling that issue, and I think the mentor, and this is a choice that I think is important, that the mentors need to be aware of who they're working with. So I always let them know the charges, especially when it's a sex offense, because I think they need to know that there are challenges and barriers, and also they just need to be educated, they need to be aware. So the mentors that are matched with sex offenders are okay with it because they're aware of what they're dealing with. And if they have questions, they contact me, they contact the case managers. It can be challenging.
Just really quickly, I'm just kind of interested in your staff structure. How many staff members you have working on this project?
That's a good question. There's 3 jurisdictional coordinators, so myself and 2 others in Prince George's County and DC. And then we have an office assistant and an executive director.
Earlier when you were talking, you had mentioned the fact that some of your mentors do special activities with your individuals that you work with. My question that I have for you is, what happens to the individual that is mentoring a mentee that isn't financially capable of taking a person out to eat, to do other things? Do they lose their mentee? Is there money to provide it to them? What happens? Because I'm sure mentees talk, and if I find out my mentee is taking me to Chili's, but you're only taking me to the library, I want a new mentor. So what happens?
We laugh, but I've had that happen a lot. Your mentor, I found out that so-and-so's mentor took him out to dinner. Well, that's why I always say start at free or cheap, and you can work yourself up. And I tell the mentees as well, that person, that pair have been meeting for 8 months. You just met your mentor last week. You know, it's not going to happen that way. But also it's important for the mentors to know that really you're not there to pay for them or to, you know, provide financial assistance in that way. Again, DC is full of free things to do. And it's really nice to go to the library and do research. And surprisingly, a lot of our mentees like to do that, whether it's to just email a friend, their significant other or not. But you know, that's something that they can do. But it's important to set up the boundary, I think, in the beginning. And of course they talk. And then it's my place to sort of mediate and explain and try to tell them why it's like that.
Do you have funding for them to do things with each other?
Good question. He asked if we had funding for them to do things together. The Montgomery County Department of Corrections has a relationship with Strathmore Hall, which is a music hall in this area. And sometimes they give free tickets. And so we get some of those that I pass along to my mentors. We're always looking for, you know, free things that we can pass on to them. Sometimes we get baseball national tickets that we pass on. We, as a program, have some discretionary funds that we can use in times of great need. So we can tap in, the jurisdictional coordinators can tap into the resources that we have to perhaps pay for somebody to get a state ID or a birth certificate, little things like that. So we'd like to say we're the program of last resort, so we try to find it somewhere else, and if we can't, then we'll help, we'll pick up, which is nice. Okay. So this is Floyd, and this is Rudy, and they've been matched since October 2010, and they're here to share a little bit about their experiences with the program, their relationship, what they do on a weekly basis. They've done a lot since they started working, and I'm sure you can ask them questions and they'll help as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Can I give you this one?
Thank you.
My name is Floyd Price. I'm a member of the People's Community Baptist Church in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I chair our prison ministry program. And the way that I got into mentoring is that we didn't have any mentors in the prison program, and I felt like the best way to do it was to model the behavior. And so since I started in October, we now have 5 people in training to become mentors. So it is working. We have done so much since October, I don't know where to start, but one of the first things, the training that I went through before we started was really helpful. I have an executive coaching practice. I coach leaders on organizational development, change, communication, but we had a class on listening skills that was really helpful. The other thing I wasn't aware of was addiction and chemical addiction and triggers, or things that I didn't know about. And the training that I went through ahead of time was really helpful in that regard. The other thing was that we got blasted over and over again about not giving money, not taking people home, not giving your home address. So in all of the trainings, that message came through loud and clear, and the reasons why it was not appropriate. So I think that worked really well. Rudy and I have done things together in terms of going to the holiday party that the program had. And we talk every day between 8 and 8:30 for some period of time about what's going on for him that day, what's going on for me sometimes that day. That's part of our regular program. We've worked on a lot of things from spelling at the beginning and computer skills. When we started, Rudy wasn't able to use a computer, and last week he submitted his resume online to Giant. So that the thing that I didn't understand, we have a commitment to meet 4 times a month for an hour. What I didn't realize was all the times that getting to the place, getting away, the research. So I think one of the things that when you have a program, really make your mentor aware of the time. It really is a lot more than that one time a month. The way that we deal with the preaching and the proselytizing is that we actually go up to the correctional facility in Boys and do Vesper services. So all of our members who want to preach, we actually go up and sing songs, do a sermon at a Vesper services. So if we have people who want to do that, we steer them in that direction. What we try to do is to help people who are in the system to achieve their goals while we're doing the mentoring. Okay, Rudy?
My name is Rudolph Washington, and yeah, I met Floyd October and everything, and I mean, he just been a support. You know, I think this mentor thing is good, you know, and everything, and I made a lot of mistakes. I've been making mistakes over and over and over, and this time I was telling myself, asking myself, what was I doing wrong, you know, so I got with my case manager, Jenna. So Jenna got me hooked up with Melissa, and Melissa got me hooked up with Floyd. So I got this team now, you know, and everything, and I mean, it's a good support team, you know, and everything. And I mean, Floyd helped me, and I call him every day. And now it was a guy named Eddie that Floyd got him because I had a dentist appointment to take me up out in Baltimore, and because Floyd had to take care of something that day, so he got him to take me up there. So me and Floyd went up there. Me and Eddie went up there to Baltimore, and now after that, I've been calling Eddie too. You know, but I know for a fact though, this is the support I need, you know, because they helped me build this structure, and I know it's on me to have that discipline to get through that structure and to be successful one day. And I'm just grateful, you know, today. I could say I'm truly grateful that I got them in my life, you know, that I'm just trying to keep it simple, you know, not trying to confuse things, just work it, you know, and everything. And I just can't, you know, I guess I'm fortunate, you know, that I'm blessed, you know. And I was just thinking about how Melissa just said that mentor moved in with his mentor. I was saying, hey, Floyd, I'm going to go pack all my stuff at PRC. I'm just joking. But it's good though, you know. And I called Floyd and we laughed and we talked and everything. And I was like, man, I got somebody out there. Like I said, man, I'm continue to use him as my support, you know, when I get out here. And by just working with him, maybe one day that I can be a mentor and help someone else, you know. So, you know, it's good and it's working, you know, and everything. I'm just, you know, just trying to take it slow and do what I'm supposed to do, you know. And I just can't say enough about the program, you know. I'm really is changing, and I'm thinking different today, you know. And that's just through, you know, this program, you know, and everything, and all my supports, you know.
And thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. You guys have you can just feel the relationship and the spirit coming off of it. I just think it's awesome. I just want to say it's awesome that you guys came to share.
Thanks.
Okay.
If y'all have questions, I'd encourage you to stay after for a few minutes. It's officially our break time, so I don't want to deny those of you who want to be released your break time. And thank you so much. Appreciate the interaction.